Hey there, viewers, and welcome back to the Self-Made Auto Channel. Got some 2005 Chevrolet Equinox, used car guy special, fresh from the auction, I guess. And you just got to remember, folks, not all cars from the auction are junk, but all junk cars are at the auction. This one evidently runs rich, so he took the car, tried to run a drive cycle, and the money light came on with codes for running rich. You know, PO 172. 175, I think, something like that. And then the car had sat for a long time, battery went dead, and he just drove it here. So I don't believe the light was on when I brought it in, but it was obviously running rich. You could smell it just in the exhaust here in the shop. It was quite strong. So we're gonna hook up a scan tool. We're gonna see what engine's in it. I imagine the 3.4. We can take a look right now. It is the 3.4. Classic engine. Only 106,000 on this baby, pretty low miles. And then we're gonna see why it runs rich. Something to think about is, you know, incorrect reading mass airflow, leaky fuel injectors, oxygen sensor gone wonky, you know, stuck rich, or stuck lean rather. Purge valve stuck open. So there's a few things you can think of right offhand, but let's get a scan tool on it and see where our fuel trims are at. I guess we can see if there are any codes. Let me get a pointing apparatus here. I don't think the light was on. I haven't had it. It sat inside here over the weekend and I haven't had it running. Oh, okay, fuel system rich. Just fuel system rich, PO 172. So maybe, must be this is old enough it doesn't have bank 1 and bank 2. Okay, so that's something to think about. Tell you what, we're gonna get right out of here. Being that we're just looking at a pretty basic problem, we're gonna go right into generic OBD2 data. That way we don't get tricked by substituted values. Now, what else can make it run rich? A bad coolant temp sensor. Ooh. I see lots of fresh tape on this harness. That's always fun. Drive cycle is not complete. Go back where we just were. Yeah, drive cycle is not complete. Says there's no codes there, but it must have a pending code because we just saw it in the OEM side. Yeah, so we just have that pending code. So let's go to live data. We're going to want to look at fuel trims, but before we start it, we want to look at some preliminary data. I'm just kind of glancing things over here. Somebody's been meddling with some stuff. Oftentimes cars from the auction are always got your little hidden surprise. Okay, let's see here. Let's just have a look at things. Long term and short term, we're going to need those. Engine coolant temp. It is about 60 here in the shop. So our long term is right now at -10, so that's not terrible. Let's see, intake air is good. And then we want this one here in grams per second. And then we're going to go bank 1 sensor 1 and bank 1 sensor 2. And I think that's all. Whoa. Evap system pressure, look at that. What the world? Our barrow is a tiny bit off, but not terrible. This is way the heck off. So it must be this thing is going to throw fuel tank pressure sensor codes, because there's no way it's got -32 inches of water. I assume the fuel tank pressure is stuck at 5 volts is going to be my guess. Okay, so let's look at what we selected. Let me go ahead and fire this pig up. Contact. So we can see we must have hit closed loop. Our fuel trim's starting to go negative here. So our total trim's about -19. But it is definitely running rich. I'm going to let it warm. I want to get it up to operating temperature. sensors get warmed up here. Yeah, so fuel trim right now, negative 25. It is in fuel control because you see our oxygen sensor is switching. So we're still in control, but barely. Yeah, negative 20, negative 27. So we're maxed out. This thing is running super, super rich. I just wanted to let it warm up. I want to get our idle down here a little bit. We're still in closed loop. Fuel trims are maxed right out. You know, negative 25 plus on each side. Idle's coming down. We're still in closed loop. We're no longer in fuel control. Okay. And I see that our mass airflow is over-reporting. Oops. Reading 5.6 grams per second at an idle here. I assume we're just about idle range 9. We're about 950. I would think 850 or so would be about it. But we're still, I think we're just going to be looking at a crappy mass airflow here. Let me see if we can unplug it. Okay, so that's unplugged. Let's see what that does. Let me let it steady out here. I'll see what that does for our fuel trim just off like a substituted value and see if that changes our fuel trim. So I've left it run a little bit with the mass airflow unplugged and our fuel trims still active, still in closed loop oddly enough, and still really, really negative. So no real change there. Let's make sure that it's not pulling crankcase gas. I'm going to unhook the PCV valve here. I'm going to plug my finger over it and stall the engine. That's what we're going to do. Let me start it back up here. Contact. Baby. All right, let's do this again. Come on, don't die. Okay, so I've got the PCV system unhooked. My finger's over the plug, so we're not pulling any crankcase gas. Yeah, we're still at minus 26. Look at that. I'm going to create a vacuum leak. We should see that change. I'll just take my finger off it slowly here. Let a little air in this engine. That's a pretty massive vacuum leak and it's still not making up as much as I thought. Brought the oxygen sensor back to life. All right, I'm gonna hook the PCV back up. Let's go ahead and start this thing back up. And then we're gonna unhook the purge valve. See if it's pulling in gas there. I doubt it. Contact. Oh, baby. Purge valve's unhooked, and it's not pulling air through that, so the purge isn't stuck open. Yeah, fuel trims are still pegged out. O2 sensor still pegged out. All right, well that's pretty interesting. Not the mass airflow, not the purge, and not pulling crankcase gas. Let me shut this off for a second. All right, well, we figured out why it's at the auction. What you got to keep an eye out on these are, of course, your aftermarket garbage parts, your eBay auto value or eBay and Amazon fuel injectors. You know, big cause of rich codes. I do see marks on all of the bolts on this upper plenum, like somebody's had it off at some point. Of course, you know, it is almost a 20-year-old vehicle, so obviously it's had work on it at some point in its life. But let's get a fuel pressure reading on it. Let's see where our fuel pressure is at. It looks like a returnless system. Just a single hose coming up, nothing going back. Let's make sure we don't have, for some reason, have some really excessive fuel pressure or a really rapid loss of fuel pressure. Hard to tell if these injectors have been changed. I mean, they look pretty crusty and and brown and dusty, you know, like they've been in there a while. This one out here, not so much. But the couple that I can see in the back, they do look like they've been in there a while. Obviously not a New York vehicle because it's an 05 and it's still alive. So it's always hard to say, you know, if this was a Southern car and they threw some, you know, some $2 injectors in it. That's something you got to think about. You know, a state where this can be driven with, you know, every light in the dash on. So let's check the fuel pressure and see where we're at there. You know what? Are these cars? I don't think these cars are flex fuel. That would be the other thing if you had a flex fuel vehicle and your alcohol counter was way the heck off. That would make it not right. Let's go ahead and start this thing up. Let me set this cap down. Contact. We got about 50 pounds of fuel pressure, so that's not bad, right? 50 PSI, let's shut it off, make sure it holds pressure. Make sure we don't have an injector peeing down. And we're right about 45 PSI right now, 44. And it looks like it's holding pretty steady, so it's not a big rapid loss of fuel pressure. Very interesting. Very interesting. Okay. Well, that's it. I give up. I don't know what it is. Thanks for watching. No, we're not giving up. No history on the car, so we can't really talk to the customer. So one thing I question is, you know, is the PCM correct? So we go in, we make sure it has the right VIN in it, make sure the VIN matches the vehicle, and see what calibration, software calibration it has, and then compare it to OEM data. Now this is the version it has in it. This one ends with 3233. It's not the newest software, but it is correct software for this vehicle. And it's interesting here, it says there's an update to ensure operation of generic service tools, which is kind of weird because we saw that fuel tank pressure way off the chart. But when I go into OEM data, the fuel tank pressure sensor is just fine. So I don't see any updates pertaining to, you know, some miraculous fix for a rich running condition. So I think we're okay software-wise. I've unplugged this injector here. Now I seen one time, I remember on a Chevy Venture van, had a 3.1 or 3.4 running rich. I think that was a long time ago. Somebody had, and of course it was you know, very similar to this, but somebody had swapped the injector harness. So bank 1 injectors were, you know, or bank 1 rather back here were swapped over on bank 2. The car ran perfectly fine, no misfires, no nothing. It just could not achieve fuel control and ran really rich. So that's what I wanted to verify here. Now I see on the harness, this says number 6, and of course this is the number 6 spark plug. And I look under the intake over here, and I see that harness says number 1 and it's back there. So it appears that they are plugged in correctly. But what I wanted to know more than that, well, along with that rather, is are these OEM injectors? And I don't think that they are. So I'm trying to see the best I can. This has a number on it. I can't tell if it's an FJ or an FU. It's an F, like Foxtrot. And then there's something else, and then 704. And then below that it says 1201. So, you know, definitely not a GM number. Let me swap the injector around on this side. And on this side there is absolutely no numbers at all. I doubt that these are OEM injectors. Now I did go through and do an injector balance test. So key on, engine off, injector balance test with the scan tool. It primes up the fuel system, and then it pulses the injectors a certain amount of time for each injector, and you see how much fuel pressure drop you have. Each injector drops 7 psi, and there's no good value or known good value for that test. It's just you check them relative to each other, how much they drop. The only thing I observed doing that, they all dropped the same, but they were noticeably different the way they sounded. Some were like very quiet, and other ones sounded like a jackhammer going off, although they all dropped the same amount of pressure. So that was my only observation. I have no idea if that's an FJ704 or an F0704 or an F0704. It's just a partial number. Now, and unfortunately, that's the only injector I can see easily. Oh no, I can see this one over here. Maybe I can get a number off this or something different. This one says I think it's an FJ. I can't get my face close enough to that, but I don't believe they're OEM injectors. At this point, not knowing any history, knowing what we've tested, okay, so if car's running rich, we're looking for outside fuel sources, purge valve, incorrect reading map sensor, incorrect reading mass airflow, pulling fuel from the crankcase through the PCV system, anything like that. Incorrect coolant temp, incorrect intake air temp, incorrect alcohol counter, that'll all make it run rich. Incorrect PCM software, wrong VIN, somebody stuck the wrong PCM in it, that's going to make it run rich. A oxygen sensor that is not reading correctly, let's say the front one's stuck lean and the fuel trim's just are stuck rich, and the fuel trims are going right negative. The fastest way to tell that is to look at your rear O2 sensor. That'll, if it'll tattletale on the front one. EGR doesn't really have a play in a mass airflow engine as far as rich running. Fuel pressure too high. We've checked all these boxes. The only box we haven't checked are correct components installed. How can they be wrong? Well, like I say, this vehicle may have been, obviously it's from out of state, but it could have been in a state where, doesn't matter if the light's on. They put some eBay injectors in it and they've been running it for X amount of years with the light on. Who cares? Doesn't affect anything. Or, let's say we dropped a used motor in it and the injectors were correct for the engine and everything, but the engine wasn't the exact engine for the car. So we've run across that on multiple occasions with used engines. This motor's set up for flex fuel and the other one's not. Injector flow rates are different. Everything else is the same. Bolts in, starts, runs, drives, all that's good, but incorrect injectors. I don't think that's the case here. I think it's a case of these are just the wrong injectors. It's over here on the Google machine, and I found our FJ704 injector set fit for 05 to 09 Equinox and Torrent. There they are, folks. 6 pieces, $52.45. And they are right from Angle Wide Injector. So look good, improve engine power, improve combustion efficiency. Guaranteed OE fit and function, high performance, perfect fit for good choice for your car. All right. Yeah, so I guess that kind of sums it all up. We're going to have to leave this one at that, folks. It is the used car guy, so I got to call him and see what he wants to do. I don't know if this is going to go get ripped back through the auction or if we're going to get a set of injectors. Even if we went down to Wilbert's U-Pull Bath, I wore my Wilbur shirt today, and got a set of used ones, you're much better off than you are with, some Amazon or eBay injectors. You got to use your head when you're buying this stuff, folks. If an OEM injector is 150 or 160 bucks each, which it is for this car, or you can get a whole set of 6 delivered to your door for $52. Come on, do you really expect it to work? No, you don't. But you do it anyways, and then it ends up creating problems. So we've seen this before. We've done other videos on this with, you know, crappy aftermarket injectors and other Chevrolets doing the same thing, making them run rich. In either case, I think we had a good process for narrowing this down, stuff that we looked at. And the other thing that you want to think about, folks, is when you're at the end and you've checked everything, you know, you've made your list, what can make this run rich, we've gone through and we've ticked every box, and we say, well, it must be the wrong component installed. When you make that call, ask yourself, if I put these in and I'm not right, what am I going to check next? And I got to that point and the answer was nothing. I can't think of anything else. At that point, I would just say, I don't know what's wrong with it. I wouldn't say that. I would probably beat myself up. But you know what you're saying, or you know what I mean, is, you know, get to that point and say, what would I do next? And if there's something else beyond that, or you can answer that question, go check it right now and tick that off your box. So anyways, why don't you tick that box where it says leave a comment, question, concern down there, comment section, folks. Don't know if I'm going to get the job, so maybe part 2 on this, maybe not. Insta, the Facebook, all of that. And just remember, viewers, if I can do it, you can do it. Thanks for watching.